So we're on the bottom of Sam Chomed Beis. So again, we brought this brisa where we stelled a vek, where we said what the rules are for being Oived Avodah Zarah. There's our Mishnah had been mechalik between someone who's being Oived in a way of a normal avodah that you do in the Beis Hamikdash. That is yichayev whether you do it for that's the normal way to be avodah the avodah zara. Hashtachava is also included. Hashtachava is also going to be chayev even if it's done for that where it's not the normal way to be avodah this avodah zara. We had different psukim for those two things, and we said that the pasuk of avodah, the one that teaches us about avodah, doing one of the shchita, it says zeveach, so it says shechting, that goes on the kol klal, and anything that's one of the avodas pnim, you're going to be chayav on. And hashtachava is only telling you the din of hashtachava. So we're up to 4 lines from the bottom. Omle Rabba bar Rav Chanan Labaya. Why do we say that the pasuk by Zeveach is the one that's teaching the whole din? He's saying, I would think that the pasuk of Hishtachava should be telling you that any type of avodah, and not any type of avodah is not the right word, any type of showing fealty, any way of serving a avodah zara should be chayiv, and let's learn out from Hishtachava. Hishtachava is not a specific type, and let's learn out from there rather than learning out from Zeveach only for the different types of avodas that are done in the Beis Hamikdash. Let's learn out that any type of avodah is chayiv. And then you'll ask, if that's the case, why does the pasuk have to tell you Zeveach? It will certainly be included in Hishtachava. So what do I need a separate pasuk for Zeveach if it's not telling you that it's limited just to those types of avodah that were done in the Beis Hamikdash? Legufe, it's coming to tell you its own thing. The mechashim me'avodah la'avodah, that you can have a machshava which is analogous to the machshavas pigel. Again, this is something that we're going to see in great detail when we get to Kachim, but the Torah says that one who brings a carbon, he let's say he does the shchita of a carbon, and when he does the shchita, he has in mind that he wants to do the zrika later on, shaloi bizmane, not in the proper time, with the machshavas pigel, he's going to be chayiv. So what happens if someone brings he shechs an animal, and his machshava with the shechita is not to be oived avodah zara, but he has in mind that later on, when he's going to burn the animal, he's going to spritz the blood, he has in mind that at that point he's going to do it l'avodah zara. So he has something that's analogous to the machshavas pigel in his machshavas avodah zara. It's not on the actual avodah he's doing now, but it relates to a later avodah that he intends to do. So he says, Legufa, the machash me avodah l'avodah, that if one has such a machshava where he does an avodah, having in mind that he's going to do a later avodah l'shem avodah zara, the itmar, that he's going to be chayiv for being oived avodah zara. The itmar hashoichet behem lizrik dam al avodah skechavim. Someone who shechs an animal, and at this time he's not yet the shechita. He says, I'm just shechting the animal, it's just preparatory. But later on, when I'm going to be zayrik the dam, or when I'll hakter chalva, when I'm going to bring the emurim, so to speak. I mean, it's avodah zara, but he says when I'm going to later burn the fats, I have in mind avodah zechavim. Rabbi Yochanan says it's also Reish Lakish mutaris. Reish Lakish says it's mutter. Now we're not talking about whether it's mutter to do such a thing. Certainly one is not allowed to do this. What it means is asura means the animal is now going to be considered a nevad. We have gemaras, lengthy gemaras about the status of a gemara of an animal that was once used for carbon. So this is also going to be asur in any way it's going to be asa b'hana because it's an animal that was once used for avodah zarah. Even though it wasn't actually used for avodah zarah, he just had in mind to do it later. So hanichel Rabbi Yochanan. So according to Rabbi Yochanan says that this animal is asur, so he obviously takes into account the machshava that you had, b'shas shchita, and he says that's enough to asa the animal. So we don't need the pasuk over here of zeveach to tell you that. Then, so therefore, we were back to understanding our brisa. We could say that that's the reason why we didn't say the pasuk of ishtachava is lamed al klal kula, because if that's the case, zeveach is left. There's no need for zeveach. Zeveach is not needed to tell you this din of having machshava, because according to Rabbi Yochanan, that's all we know that anyway. We learn it out from Pigel.
So Pigel, maybe, and when you say that he learns it out,
Pigel,
you
just
think
like
we definitely know that he's not learning it from Zeveh, the pasuk.
Exactly right. Well, the Gemara will go back, but we're going to backtrack on that a little bit. But that's the thesis at this point. Rish Lakish boikra, but according to Rish Lakish l'chayra, this is a valid objection that let's say you can't say that you need the pasuk of I'm sorry, you can't say that the pasuk of Zeveach must be telling you the din of that it's lamed ala klal kulai, because maybe it's coming to tell you this other din. Maskef la Rapapa says Rabbi Yochanan loy kra. The Gemara says that, how do you know just because Rabbi Yochanan says this din, which Einachanami, it's not big learned from our pasuk, but you're still going to need a pasuk to tell you machshava. Ad kam lekasar Rabbi Yochanan ela behema avagav bakatalahu. All he was saying, all Rabbi Yochanan said, is that the behema is no longer is a nevad because you compare it to pigel. But to say that the person who does such a thing should be a bar katala, that's a different step. That's a further step. So maybe you need the pasuk of Zevech to tell you that even just for having a machshava, a pigel analogous machshava, is going to be chayiv misa. And that's what the pasuk is needed for. The pasuk of Zevech is needed for. So you said this kasha should be on Rabbi Yochanan as well. Racha Breda Avika says, he says no. Even according to Reish Lakish, he said it's a kasha according to Reish Lakish, and it will, and we suggested it would also be a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Ad kali kasher Reish Lakish ala behema. Maybe that which Reish Lakish argued on Rabbi Yochanan is only by behema. Avagavra bar katalu. But a gavra would taka be mechoyev, meaning even Reish Lakish would agree that we would be able to compare someone who has a machsheves avodah zara when he does the shchita. We would say that's comparable to pigel, and he'd be chayiv misvara, and you wouldn't need a pasuk for that. Why would that which he said that you're going to be potter over here as a nevad midahava mishtachav alahar the har mutter of the b'sayif. It's possible for something to be mutter, for the animal, for the object to not become a nevad, even though what the person did is chayiv. So maybe Rish Lakish would say the person himself, the person who did this avodah, would be chayiv because he was oived in a way, like we see by pigel. That's a type of avodah. There's also a type of avodah he had in mind to be oived. But the animal, Rish Lakish would say, would not become chayiv, would not become a nevad, because we find that there are cases where someone can do an action where he himself is being oived and he's chayiv misa, and the object that he's being oived does not become a nevad. Like we said, we brought this up. We had this earlier in the Masechta. If someone is oived a mountain, it has no effect on the mountain. The mountain doesn't become a nevad and become asa b'hana, even though the person is certainly chayiv. He's an oived avodah kechav, and he's going to be chayiv. So therefore, we have a example of such a thing that the person could be chayiv for his maisa, even though it doesn't have an effect to make the thing that he's being oived a never. So even according to Reish Lakish, I could say that we would have said misvara without the pasuk of zevech, that he's going to be the person who did this is going to be, who had this machshava, is going to be chayiv. Amalei Rav Acha midifti l'Ravina. Now this is, I have to tell you, I find this Gemara very peculiar, because the Gemara now is going to go on this kasha of Rava. It's going to say, now I understood that he was asking a kasha. Let's say it's going alam kalkulay. And now the Gemara is going to, it seems to me what the Gemara is doing is now asking a kasha on what this hava amina was. But it's almost like the Gemara is taking it as this is what Rava's conclusion was. But I mean, even though it's not like our Mishnah very clearly said that the chiyuvim are for being oived in a way of avodah and for hishtachava. But the Gemara seems to be understanding that Rava was suggesting that this should be the din.
And therefore, what according to Rava, what happens now that this is a din? What would change practically?
What would change is that then everything, all the whole second part of the Mishnah, any type of avodah that you do, any way of showing fealty to avodah zarah would be chayiv, even if it's not the normal way to do it. We'd say hashtachava would be the example that we would follow. It's not limited to just those things that would be used as avodas, that you're going to be chayiv even if you're not doing it at b'derech avodah. But the Gemara is like, it's taking it more than a kasha. It almost seems to be saying Rava held that this was the conclusion. Amalei Ravacha Rachami Diglavin. Lamayda Kamalei Rava Bar Chanan Labaya. Emi Yatsa Shtachava Lamada Kalkula. Echa Yavdu Lamute Mai. The pasuk says, Yishamulacha Pentinakash Achareim Acharei Hishamdam. Don't follow after when you come into Eretz Yisrael. After you destroy their idols, you shouldn't follow after them. Pentidrush Leileihem. Lemar Echa Yavdu Hagoyim Oela. How did they don't fall into the trap of saying how did the Goyim, how were they over these avodah zaros? We want to do the same thing. So from the fact that the pasuk says Echa Yavdu, that's a mashmois, that there's a extra chiyuv for doing something in the way that Goyim do it. So, but if you're going to learn out that everything is learned out from Mishtachava, that any type of, doesn't make a difference how the Goyim worship the idol. It's any type of shibud, any type of worshiping is going to be chayiv. Doesn't make a difference how they themselves do it. So what is Eicha Yavdu excluding when it says, the pasuk says that there's a chiyuv for being oived in the way that the avodah zarah is never. If you're going to say that it's coming to exclude not someone who bows down or someone who's megadef or menashek, like it was the examples in the Mishnah, but it's coming to exclude someone who's pious, who relieves himself in front of an avodah zarah. So that's not just not the way that the avodah zarah is normally worshipped, but it's actually degrading to the avodah zarah. So we would say let's learn that out from Eicha Yavdu. So you could learn it out. You could exclude that from Hishtachava. Ma'ashtachava derech kibud, af kol derech kibud. The fact the pasuk said Hishtachava as an example of being oived, that comes to tell you, that tells you that it's only something that's a derech kavod. So I wouldn't need Eicha Yavdu to teach that if Hishtachava was the source for saying that anything that's respectful is going to be considered a avodah zarah, because that would already exclude a payer atzmei lezayvchem. El lamute hapayer atzmei lemerkulis. So what I need the pasuk of Eicha Yavdu would be for a very specific case where someone who is payer, he relieves himself lemerkulis, which is a type of avodah zarah that was mentioned in the Mishnah. They would pile up rocks and then they would throw rocks at the rocks. And so that's also a bizayandik way of being Oived Avodah Zarah, but that's their traditional way to do it. And if someone didn't do that traditional way, but he did it in a different traditional way, meaning he was pious, he did a different way of degrading it. From Mishtachava, I wouldn't tell you, because Mishtachava tells you that if you're mevaza Avodah Zarah, which is normally respected, then you're not going to be chayiv. But how do I know if you're mevaza an Avodah Zarah that's normally mevaza, but not in its own type? Kamash malan. That's what you need. That's what you need, the pasuk of Eicha Yavdu. So again, it could be that we're talking about, according to Rava Bar Chanan, it could be it's theoretically possible that Ishtachava could be the source to being chayiv when you're oived in its not typical way. In any animal, in any kind of avodah zarah, you could be oived. You should be chayiv when you do any type of respectful action. So where do we know when someone shechs an animal, which is one of the avodas in the Beis Hamikdash, and he does it l'shem markulas, which is an avodah zarah that's normally disrespected? How do you know? The pasuk says you shouldn't continue to bring your karbanos to their demons, to their the pasuk continues, asher heim zoynim acharem, that they follow after chukas olam tia zois lahem l'daraisa. You shouldn't bring your karbanos to their deities, to their demons. But it's not needed for where you're being oived their avodah zarah in the normal way. Because we already said that when you're oived avodah zarah in the normal way, so will you have to use it for you bring it shalai kadarka? And according to Rabba Baba Chanan, we should have learned from Ishtachava, meaning Ishtachava, the point of Ishtachava is that when you're oived it's not just when you're oived one of the avodas in the Beis Hamikdash, but Rabbi Bar Chanan's thesis is that we should learn from Ishtachava that anytime you're oived, even if it's, as long as it's in a respectful way, as long as you're showing respect to the avodah zarah, you should be chayiv, even if it's not the normal way in which that avodah zarah is worship. And for the Gemara, no, that's not talking. That's talking about a different thing. Hasam b'zayveach lahachas. Over there, one was saying from that pasuk, what we're learning is not what we would have learned from Mishtachava. That would have told you that if someone brings a carbon and his intention is not to worship this other avodah zarah, rather his whole intention is just to put a thumb in the eye. It's sort of to lahachas. He just wants to be a kaifer in the Rebbeinu Shalom chas v'shalom. His whole intention is, and this is not such a strange concept. The person, it's not that he believes in this other avodah zarah. He's just doing it to protest against the Rebbeinu Shalom. So that's what it's coming to tell you. It's coming to tell you zeveach lahachas. It's not just shaloi kedarka, but it's that he was doing it as a protest, that he's going to be chayiv. If he does anything that's respectful toward the avodah zarah, he's going to be chayiv. So that's what we need, this pasuk. Rav Hamnuna erkasului leituri. Rav Hamnuna lost some oxen, and he was going and looking for them. We're in the middle of Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. Pagabe Rabba. Good morning. We're in the middle of Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. Rav Hamnuna erkasului leituri. Rav Hamnuna lost some oxen, and he was going and looking for them. Pagabe Rabba. And he came across Rabba. Ramalei Masnisan Hadadi. And he asked Rabba a stira in Mishnais. Knan. However, avodas kechavim. Our Mishnah said someone who's oived avodas kechavim is going to be chayiv. Oived in oimer loy. It's mashma only if he actually does an act of oived. He has to do something. He could either, like we mentioned in the Mishnah, he could bring something, he could bring a carbon, or he could be mishtachava, or he hugs or kisses. Well, those will only be chayav up. But the mashmais of the Mishnah is, the Mishnah says only if he's oived, but not if he's oimer, not if he just says, now the Mishnah had mentioned if someone said, I am pledging fealty to the Avodah Zarah, he's going to be chayav. But that's not what we're talking about over here. We're talking about over here where, David Koresh, some kind of cult leader, some idol worship priest, said to him, let's come and let's join the Avodah Zarah. And he said, okay, I'm going to be over the Avodah Zarah. So, and that was saying he's not going to be chayav. You have to do more than just agree that you're going to go be over. So that's the mashmayis of our Mishnah. If someone said, he was told, let's go be over Avodah Zarah, and he said, okay, let's go be Ovid. Elech ve'avoid. Let's go and be worship. Neilech benavid. Or I will go and worship. Or neilech benavid. Let us go and worship. But in any case, he said these various expressions of saying, I'm going to go and be Ovid the Avodah Zarah that you suggested. So going to be the Brisa says is the Mishnah. I think it's a Mishnah later on that you're going to be chayiv. So this sounds like this Mishnah says that you are chayiv for saying you're going to be oived. Amaloi. So he answered back. Who was it again? It was Rav Hamnuna answered back to Rabbah. Our Mishnah that says that you only chayiv when you're being oived is where he said specifically, I'm going to be oived, but I'm not going to be. I don't intend to be chayiv for just saying the only kibul. I'm only accepting this avodah zarah when I actually do the avodah. So he's precluding. He's making a specific provision saying that I don't want what I'm saying to be construed as being oived. It's only when I actually do the avodah. So then it's limited to when he actually does the avodah that it's going to be chayiv misa for being oived avodah zarah. Rav Yosef says an alternate answer for the stira in the Mishnais. One says when someone says he's going to be oived, he's chayiv. And one, our Mishnah seems to say you only chayiv for being oived, and the later Mishnah says you're chayiv for saying you're going to be oived. Tnai shekalta me'alma. You're bringing two Mishnayos, Tanohi. There's a machlekes Tanoim already about whether someone's words are enough to make him be chayiv. The Tanya, ha'omer boyu va'avduni. If someone says, "I want you to come and be oived me," Rav Meir mechayiv, Rav Yehuda pait. Rav Meir says, "Yechayiv Yehuda pait." You have to be clear. We're talking over here about a different chiyuv. This is not the chiyuv of being oived avodah zarah. This is the chiyuv of being mesis, of convincing someone else to be oived.
This is David Koresh.
What?
David Koresh himself.
Yeah, David Koresh, right. So, as we know, there's a pasuk that says, there's a mesis umediach. We hear about that all the time. But mesis is also chayav. So if someone told someone to go be oived me, Ramey says he's chayav Yehuda pait. So Hecha de Polcho, if David Koresh said go be oived me, and he has a whole compound out in I don't know where it was in Texas, in Waco, and if they're following him, so he was successful. He was mesis, so he's certainly going to be chayiv. And we darshan, even though obviously the taich of leisasa l'chapesel means you shouldn't create idol. We say leisasa l'chapesel. Don't make we darshan it to mean don't make yourself into an idol. Where a person said, "Come be oived me." Rameya sava dibura milsahi. Rameya said, "Will say yechayev for saying that because once you said that, you were already mesis." Yehuda sava dibura lav milsahi. If you said it and nobody's listening, you haven't done anything. You weren't actually mesis anyone. You haven't even really tried. Just saying it is not enough. Hadar Amar Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef, after thinking about it, says, Lam Milsa Hidiyami. That which I said is not valid. I feel Rav Yehuda, B'dibura Nami Chiyuv Mechai. Even Rav Yehuda over there, who says you're potter, he would agree that a dibur has a meaning and it's enough to be Mechai. You know, the Chavetz Chaim is a whole Sefer Lashon Hara. Certainly, dibura has power. The Tanan, what is that? Daled. The Tanya. Yuda Oimer Lo'olam Ein Chayv Ad Sheyomer Evod Alecha Ve'Evod Evoid Elich Ve'Evoid Nelich Ve'Evod. Yehuda says you're not chayv until you say go worship, or I'm going to worship, or let's go worship. Or so Rabbi Yehuda clearly is saying in the Mishnah that we're trying to answer. We're trying to answer that this Mishnah later on that says that you're chayiv for just saying you're going to be Ovid. Rabbi Yehuda, who's the man Amar over there, who said that you're not chayiv when you're trying to be Mesis, he says you are chayiv for saying I'm going to go be Ovid. But
so obviously Dibur Milsi, obviously.
So Dibur Milsi. But my commitment. So why does Rabbi Yehuda say though when someone says, "Come be Ovid me," and that's all he did, that he's potter? The Mesis la'atzmei. But Amrle in commitment. Where he says, "Come be Ovid me," and they say yes. Masav Mesis la'atzmei shame Mesis la'atzmei shamile. They listen to him. The Indika Amrle kushtahu. They are really agreeing that they're going to be over him. So there was really something going on. His being Mesis them was listened to, and they paid attention. Now they're saying, yes, we're going to join you, is meaningful. And when David Koresh goes over to a guy, when the guy holding a sign in front of Grand Central says, come worship me, I am the Lord. And people say, okay, Meimer Amri, how is this nudnik carrying a stick saying he's God? How is he any different from Minan Didan? That which they're saying yes, they're just laughing at him. So meaning they never listened to what he said. So his saying I'm a God was meaningless.
What's Rav Yosef saying then? Rav Yosef switching his mind.
Rav Yosef is saying
originally said we got what he originally said. He originally said
he wants to say that anyone who says anything, it doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. Dibur lav milsi. And therefore, that's the reason why he says when someone says he's Mesis, when the guy says, we worship me, it's not listened to. If they don't listen to him, we ignore it.
As original.
Yeah.
We knocked it off with the Brisa, the clear that says the lesson of.
And that will also explain our Mishnah. We'll say he would be the Manda Amar of our Mishnah. It says if you're Ovid, you're not going to be Chai. If you just only Chai if you're Ovid, not if you say anything. Because he holds Dibur la Milsi. Now we rejected that. Rabbi Yehuda says Dibur Milsi, and someone says something, it is meaningful, and because we see from the Brisa, the Itaka says in our that Legabi our Mishnah, we say he says like the Brisa, not like the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if a person says I'm going to be Ovid, he's chayiv. So Dibur is a Milsi. Yehuda said that if someone says come be Ovid me, he's going to be potter. And we said if people listen to him, everyone will agree that he's chayiv. So it must be talking about where he just said it and nobody listened. We said no. That's talking about where he said come be Ovid me, and people said yes. And he's saying, but even so, you're going to be potter, because people are just laughing at him. When the guy says come be Ovid me, and people say yes, it's meaningless. They never even listened to what he said. They weren't paying any attention to him. So it's as if he was in an empty room and he said, come be Ovid me. You can't be chayiv for being Mesis if no one's listening. You're a crazy person. No one's paying attention to you.
So what's the difference in this case and the original?
What do you mean?
Rabbi Yosef, what changed?
Rabbi Yosef.
Seer, what's the
Rabbi Yosef had originally, it's not a question of a different seer. He's saying it's a different outcome.
It's the same seer.
It's the same guy who's saying, come be Ovid me. But the reason why Rabbi Yehuda says he's not potter is because no one listened to him.
Like the first case was talking about a real guy.
It was a guy, with Dave, right?
It's a real guy. The second case is the guy, a homeless guy.
Certainly, if people listen to him, you're going to be chayiv, right? Because he was Mesis. He did that. What else could Mesis be?
We have that price though.
What we're saying now is that even if he says, "Come be Ovid me," and people say yes, and then they keep going on, they go back to work. They're being mechuchebe. They're not really paying attention.
First guy, the guy's wearing a suit, and the second one's where the guy, the homeless guy. We said, yeah, sure, done.
What we're saying is we treat him always as a homeless guy. We're always going to treat him as a homeless guy, unless they actually do something. When people say yes, the question is when people say yes to him. Obviously, if they're going to follow him and they're going to open up a mega church with 8,000 people, he's going to be amazed. But the question is, what happens if people say yes? And that's what we're talking about over there. Rabbi Yehuda is saying if they just say yes, they don't really mean it. So tomorrow, Umasnisin. So now we still have a problem, right? So this was Rabbi Yosef's answer. Rabbi Yosef was trying to answer the steer in the Mishnayos that our Mishnah says that you're not chayiv for just saying I'm going to be oived. It's only if you're oived. And the Mishnah later on says you're chayiv for just saying you're oived. You could be mechalak. Kan be yochad hanisis, kan be rabim hanisasim. It depends on whether there was one person who says it. A person our Mishnah, it says you're not going to be chayiv unless you're actually oived. It's when you were told that somebody said, come be oived, and it's a single person. He says, okay, I'm going to come be oived. So a person could change his mind. Okay, I said yes today, but tomorrow I change my mind. But the Mishnah later on, where they said, let's go be oived, that's talking about a rabim hanisasim. It's talking about a large group of people. And once they said it, there's power in numbers, and then they're sort of solidified in their opinion. They're not going to retract from that. Yachid le mimlich v'toy basrei, a yachid. It's the other way around. Yeah. He says yachid le mimlich v'toy basrei. A yachid, he can make a mistake and he gets caught up with it and he does it. Rabin mimlich v'loy toy basrei. Somebody's going to pick their head up and say, this doesn't make any sense. Let's not do this, and then they're all gonna.
So the Bryce over there says that you're chayiv for a mirror alone. That's talking about yachid.
About yachid,
easily swayed.
Right, but a rabbim, somebody's gonna hop on and
that's
say,
our Mishnah.
Yeah. I'm Rav Yosef. Allah. Where do I see this distinction between the yachid and a rabbim? D'chsiv, they say eva loy, but they say shmal. Ha'ava v'shama chayiv. We learn in a brayso. The pasuk says you shouldn't listen when somebody is trying to be maces you to convince you to be oived. But if you do so, you're chayiv. And that's mashma. What's the?
It sounds like a yachid. It sounds like a yachid, and it sounds like. It sounds like even if it sounds like it's only chayiv, only if you actually act on it.
Let's say eva loy v'leisishmal. So it sounds like a yachid, only on a yachid, but not on a rab. You only chayiv ha'ava v'shama chayiv. No, this is even talking about a rabbim, but it's only by a rabbim that ha'ava v'shama is chayiv. I think that's what it's saying. No, it says ha'ava v'shama. If he says I'm going to go and I'm going to listen, that's enough, and that's talking about a yachid. A yachid is going to be chayiv as opposed to a rab. Esvei abaya mishani bein nisis to rabim and nisis to yachid. Can you really make such a nafkamina b'atanya? Ki asischa achicha ben imcha echad yachid anichitz. This is a brayso that says. The pasuk says when your brother will try to convince you to follow after Avodah Zarah. It's really what I got out of this whole Gemara is how many psukim there are about being Avodah Zarah. It's really a whole. The whole Dvarim is full of it. When your brother will come to convince you, Ben Imcha, the son of your mother, it's mashma echad yachad anisid, echad yirabim anisasim. It's mashma both. Ben Imcha, it's not a mashma of just a yachad. It's in any case. And the pasuk, not this pasuk, but we know that the halachas are different for a rabbim from a yachid and a yachid from a rabbim. A yachid is different than the din of a rabbim. That a yachid is going to get a yachid who, yachid mechal rabbim. That a yachid who's oived avodah zara gets skila, which is a chomadika misa. Masha ein kain anshe yer nidachas gets sayif, which is an easier misa. But a yachid has a maila that his possessions don't get destroyed. But by Ir Nidachas, which is a rabbin, you take everyone's belongings into the town square and you burn them. And the opposite for Ir Nidachas is going to be more chamor legabitz mamayim, but it's going to be a kula de kamisa. It's only going to get side. So Zakdamar shani. But it's only on these things that there's an afkamina between a rabbin and a yach in the Bryce. In all other ways, they're similar. So how could you say that the two to answer the steer between the two mishnayos that it depends on whether it's a yachid and a rabbin? This Bryce is mashma. The only difference between a yachid and a rabbin is whether and what type of misa they get and whether their mammon is destroyed. So Abaya rejects this teretz of Rabbi Yosef. Elam Abaya gives a different teretz to the two mishnayos. Combinations v'yatzmai, combinations of piacherim. Depends on whether he is he's convincing himself to be Ovid Avodah or someone else is convincing him. If he's saying I'm going to be Ovid, but not because someone else told him to, he just picked up and said, "I'm you know what? I just decided I'm going to be Ovid Avodah," or if he's convinced by someone else. So, mipi atzmai mimlach. If he just came to had a mishigas one day, he could undo it easily. Mipi acherim gar basrayu. But when it comes from other people, then he's gar basrayu. So our Mishnah is mipi atzmai, and the Mishnah later on is from others. Amar Amai. Depends on whether he was convinced by another person to say. The nafkamina is right. The steer is that in one place we say, person says I'm going to be Ovid Avodah Zarah, he's chayiv. The later Mishnah says he's chayiv for saying I'm going to be Ovid, and our Mishnah says only when he's actually Ovid. Saying is not enough. So saying the nafkamina is going to be, why did he say I'm going to be Ovid? If he just decided on his own, then he could back away from it. So that's why our Mishnah said only when if he says I'm going to be Ovid, it's not enough. He has to actually be Ovid. But if someone says go be Ovid, and he says okay, if there was a mesis, and he agrees to the mesis, he's the one listening, then he's going to be chayiv. Then he's going to be chayiv because he's probably not going to change his mind. He's under his influence. Amar Avaya, mino amidala. D'chsev l'se'eva loy v'loy sishmayel. The same pasuk that we said before. Ha'av v'shama chayiv. But if he listens, he's chayiv. So it's talking about when he was told by someone else, then he's going to be chayiv. Once he listens, or he says, I'm going to listen, then he's already chayiv. Rava Amar, Rava says no. Both Mishnayos are talking about where it's mipiacherim. If that's the case, why does our Mishnah say you're not gonna be chayiv until you're Ovid? We said when the person who was convincing him said, listen, this is a great avodah zarah, you should really follow it. This is the way we eat, this is the kind of avodah we do, this is the way it eats, this is the way it drinks, this is the good things it does, this is the bad things. He says all the miles of Yisraelis. And the our Mishnah that says you're only going to be chayiv when you actually do it is where there was no sales pitch given about it. You were just told, let's go be Ovid Avodah Zarah, and he agreed. So when you weren't convinced, the guy could also be unconvinced easily. Amarav, where do I know there's such a distinction? The pasuk says that you shouldn't follow. Let's see the whole pasuk. You shouldn't follow any of the avodah zaros that are nearby or that are far. Mali kreva mali chaykim. What does the pasuk say near and far? If someone says, there's this great avodah zarah I know about in Tibet, and we should all follow it, you should say, look around you. Look at the people down Coney Island and Avenue H. Look at their avodah zaros, and you know that it's nonsense. Don't fall for the ones in Tibet because you don't know exactly what they are. My love, I'm like so the only nafkamina why what's the difference between what's in Tibet and what's here is because the person was saying, oh, the one in Tibet is amazing. It has all these milas. So the pasuk says you could disprove it. Use your own sense. You see what's nearby. It's all the avodah that nearby. You see it are useless. So the ones there that you're getting the whole sales pitch are also useless. So you see from there, Shmamina, you see from there that the pasuk is mechalik between someone, what the pasuk is talking about, someone who is convinced to listen. He gave a whole sales pitch, and the Torah is giving you the answer to the sales pitch. Rav Ashi Amar Sefer B'Yisrael Muma. Rav Ashi says a whole different shot, different answer. The later Mishnah that says Yechayev for just saying something that's talking about the Yisrael Mummer, someone who already threw off all the avodas, all the mitzvahs. So when he just says it's going to be Avodah Avodah, he's likely going to follow. But our Mishnah is talking about a regular yid, and he fell in one thing. Ravina Amar Loizu Avsuktani. Ravina says our Mishnah that says Ovid is not. He's not. It doesn't mean to say that only Ovid is chayiv. It's saying not just are you chayiv for being Ovid, for saying not just are you chayiv when you're Ovid, you're even going to be chayiv. The next Mishnah tells you that you're chayiv even for just saying. So it's not a stira. He rejects the whole stira. He says the first Mishnah is saying you're chayiv for Ovid, and the next Mishnah is saying you're chayiv for saying. Someone who is over is chechavim because he is either he's under someone's sway, he likes the person personally, or meira he's scared of the person. Abaya mechayev, Rava Potter. Abaya says yechayev, Rava says yepat. Abaya mechayev, da'apolcha. Abaya says yechayev. In the end, you are over. It doesn't make a difference what your motivation was. Rava Potter, yikabel le'eliyah in ilay. It's only if you're really genuinely following the Avodah Zarah. But if you're just doing it to please another person or because you're scared of another person, that's not Avodah Zarah. Okay, we're going to have to stop. As much as I... Okay.